All right.
Here we go.
Welcome back to another episode of the Merge Feast. My name is Blake. I'm here with Brandon and Logan. What's up, guys?
Hey.
Hello, how's it going?
Going well. Uh, I'll start off this week by apologizing. So, with Thanksgiving, kind of recording this a little bit later than normal. So, sorry for the delay in getting this out to you all. But it was once again another exciting episode, and I want to start by talking about Sue and kind of some of the dynamic there because she was left out of the vote last week, and and she seemed to be blindsided, um, and we all know how much she's taken some of that personally, uh, and so were you guys surprised that Caroline was able to get back in her good graces so easily?
I I actually was just based off of how Sue is with Kyle and how he voted for her and how she's just like hated him ever since. I kind of figured like, oh, Carolyn went against me. Now I don't want anything to do with her. I thought she was going to play it emotionally like that again, but yeah, it almost was like she didn't really care at all.
Yeah.
And I think some of that had to do with how Caroline kind of presented it and like the difference there. And because I mean, Sue talked about just the trust factor of that's what made her and Gabe so close is Gabe came to her at the beginning and was honest with her and told her these things. And so I think just having that conversation with her really helped in a way. But I was definitely a little surprised as well.
Yeah, I don't know if that was a bigger moment for Sue or a bigger moment for Caroline because she can clearly talk her way and like, in and out of situations, and I wasn't sure if that was a kind of a. I mean, it was obviously a good thing for both of them, but was Sue just like looking for somebody to trust at that point, or was Caroline just that good? And I don't know. It was probably a little bit of both, but
Yeah, I guess I definitely probably a little bit of both there. I think with Sue having her number one voted out, obviously at that point you want to go out and try and find somebody else to be have that trust factor and all too. But I also think Caroline does have a really good or is really well at like talking and getting her out of that situation or kind of presenting herself in a way of like, hey, this is why I did it. This is what I'm. These are some things here to kind of bring us together. But I think probably a little bit of both, like you said.
what'd you think about kind of on that same side with Caroline? And this may be jumping ahead a little bit, but let's talk about Rachel. Um, and Rachel built a lot of trust with Sue because she told her about the advantage that she got when she didn't tell the other group. And this week kind of split up into two groups almost. It was like Teeny, Rachel, Andy, Sue, and Caroline. And then we've got everybody else. And when Rachel went on the journey, and we can talk about that journey, but she ended up getting an advantage and then came back and told Sue. And like that was, I think, when Sue had stated, like you said, Logan, that hey, Gabe came to me immediately and like, and I don't know, did Gabe tell Sue about his idol? Um, but there was some sort of trust built there, and so that was like an immediate like relationship trust building moment between Rachel and Sue. And man, Rachel is playing so dang good. I think I saw a
Yeah.
thing the other day. It was Rachel and Caroline have not had their name written down yet, which is impressive. What'd you think of the well, I guess what'd you think of Rachel's game this week?
First off, the journey that she went on was awesome.
It was.
I don't know if we've seen that before, but
Mm-mm.
I loved that it was different from journeys we've seen in the past where, you go to an island and play a silly game, but super creative by Survivor. I loved that. But as far as Rachel's game, getting to go on the journey, getting the Balaka vote, which I think we all talked like if there was going to be another advantage, that likely was going to be it because it had come up earlier in the show.
Mhm.
And then gaining trust with Sue and kind of creating a majority alliance with Teeny and Andy, Sue, and Caroline, and having Genevieve, Kyle, and Sam kind of the odd man out. Rachel winning immunity, taking down Kyle, basically going head to head with him, and then ultimately like getting him out. It was a great week for Rachel.
Probably one of the best weeks she's had. I mean, just everything that went on from getting the advantage to, like Brandon said, beating Kyle, kind of sealing the fate of him going home, and bettering her game. I think one of the best weeks she's had so far.
And she's only getting better. That's
Mhm.
crazy. So
And having, I mean, the advantage, but then also the idol that nobody knows about, and like she's setting herself up really, really well.
yeah. Yeah, I mean the fact that she has a majority alliance behind her, a block of vote, so even if you don't have the majority, you can still have the majority. And then also an idol on top of that. She's sitting very, very well. The other person that I think is sitting really well, not surprisingly, because we've talked about it so long. And Brandon, you were spot on. I think you called this before any of us, was Andy. Andy, and he is playing brilliantly. Like his social game is really, really good. And I'm just curious to hear your thoughts, Brandon, because like I said, I think you were on to Andy earlier than either one of us, me and Logan. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts on Andy this week.
I love Andy. I still think he's playing a great game. My favorite thing this week was that he's doing all these smart things and has like a lot of control of the game, and just nobody thinks he does. Nobody's even looking at him as a threat. So he's playing this great game, at least from the viewer's perspective, but nobody on the island sees it that way. So he's in a really good spot.
Do you think he'll be able to speak to that if he makes it to the end? Or do you think everybody on the island, because if the viewers think he's playing a great game, but nobody on the island does, that's a tough
Yeah.
spot to be in.
That is tough. And I think if he gets the opportunity, and I think I might have said a couple weeks ago that I don't know if he'd be able to convince the jury, but a couple weeks out from that now, I think he could. I think if he had the opportunity to get in front of a jury and speak to his game and speak to where he was on day 1 or day 3, whenever he had that meltdown on the island that he mentioned actually this last episode, to where he is now and where he's positioned himself in the game, plus all of his confessionals that we see, where he's so articulate and just explains things so well and so easy to understand. If he can do that, I think he could convince some people and get some votes.
Yeah.
And then I was actually going to ask, do you think he's going to be able to speak to his gameplay? Because at the end of the day, if he can't speak to his gameplay and convince the jury, then obviously I don't think he'd get a ton of votes because of the way us viewers see how people view him in the game. I think I hope, honestly, if he makes it to the end, I hope he gets the chance and can convince him, because the turnaround from at the very beginning of the game to now, completely different player, from what I've seen, and it's actually been a lot of fun to see him kind of grow and evolve.
Yeah. Well, and I think I was reminded this week. So, two things: how he was talking at Tribal Council this week on just like you don't necessarily want to be at the bottom, and you don't want to be at the top. You want to kind of ride out in the middle to make it to the end, like and peak at the perfect time. And he seems to be doing that really well for somebody who was on the bottom. Like in a lot of people's eyes, he has kind of clawed his way back to the middle and is in good graces with just about everybody. Like he does not seem to be a target, and I think these next couple weeks could be really, really good for him. But I was kind of reminded, and I know like the motto of Survivor is outwit, outplay, outlast, but survival is key, and he is making it through every single week seemingly unscathed and in almost a better position week after week than he was the previous week. So I'm very impressed, and good on you, Brandon, for seeing that, like I said, long before Logan and I did.
Yeah, no, I love the spot he's in the game, because now, all of the people that he was having to answer to are now having to answer to him or are already on the jury. So it's fantastic.
Well, and I think he's doing a really good job too. And we may have mentioned this last week that he's not necessarily the one throwing out names, but he's on board. So he's like, "Hey, tell me your ideas. What are you thinking? I love it. Let's do it." And then also they talked about it. I think we got the quote wrong a couple weeks ago when we were talking about what Genevieve said, like seeing the noise to see, or seeing through the noise to see the news. And he seems to be doing a really good job of that. Like, I'm going to talk to everybody and hear out their plans and be on board, and then kind of decipher what's just noise and what is actually the plan and what's the news. So I don't know. I'm really, really liking where he's at. What did you think of the challenge this week? I know we talked about it a little bit with Rachel beating out Kyle, but do you think that's as tough as it looks? Because I mean, it is like it's always so close, and nobody seems to just run away with it. Everybody seems to struggle at it for a while, but that is like classic Survivor, and it looks tough. And some of the challenges, it's like, okay, that doesn't look that hard, but I don't know. I'm just curious your guys' thoughts on this challenge.
I'm curious how long that challenge actually took, because I mean, obviously they make it, they break it down to 15 minutes for us, but like, were they out there for an hour, 2 hours? What was it, But there's so many elements. Like, it seems simple when you're looking at it, like the challenge itself, but there's so many just like little things that go into it. Like having to steady this rope and make sure that a platform is flat, making sure that your letters are stacked to where they won't fall over as easily, making sure that you have enough slack or not too much slack, making sure when you step up on the platform you don't release too much. There's so much that goes into it, and I don't know if I could do that challenge.
Be tough.
That is
let
one.
alone spell immunity, right?
Yeah, I think the thing that makes that one so difficult is obviously when you're going forward, having to go forward and backwards, and keeping the rope tight, but not making any big movements, especially obviously as the blocks get higher and the word is spelled out further, it makes it that much easier for it to tip over. So having that patience and just soft touch, and I mean, even from going backwards to knowing when you're at the platform to holding onto the rope and reaching over and grabbing another piece, like just the amount of focus it takes, it is a tough challenge. I'd be curious to see how long they were actually out there as well.
Yeah, that is something I would like to see Survivor do, is kind of give us some sort of a time lapse, or put up on the screen, 45 minutes in, or I don't know, something I think would be kind of interesting. Um, but it's one of my favorite challenges because it's not all physical and it's not all mental. You have to be on the entire time. As soon as you lose focus or stumble physically, like, you're back at square one. So it's I always find it funny because you could literally sit there for 10 minutes and then be perfect from there on out and potentially win, because everybody seems to drop it at some point. And it's like right there at the end. I mean, there were so many people close. I think Genevieve was really, really close at winning too. And then it fell at the last minute. It's like, okay, everybody's back at square one. So, and Teeny was really close, but she kind of took a different approach. She was like slow and steady. I'm not rushing things. And I don't know. It was kind of cool to see the different strategies on it. Speaking of Genevieve, Logan, how do you think she is, like, avoiding, or how do I want to word that? I guess avoiding getting votes. How is she making it through every single week? Because she's clearly a big target. She is strategic, and is it is it as simple as there are other targets bigger than her? Or, I mean, how is she making it through, in your opinion?
It's a great question, and I've honestly thought about that because I think, yes, she is a really, 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 really big target, and there were other big targets out there that needed to get out as well. But in my mind, I think the way she had been playing and going through the game, orchestrating votes, doing different things. I mean, just the way she's played the game, I honestly thought she was a bigger threat than some of the other people that have been voted out previously. Example, Kyle. I thought Genevieve should have gone first before Kyle due to the game that she's played. Yes, Kyle, I think winning the challenges, being a family man, everybody likes him. Those things always help at the end of the game. But in my sense, the game of outwit, outlast, outplay is Survivor, and I think she's done that better. I think in regards to not getting votes, I really don't know how she's able to do that. I think the focus on other people has kind of outweighed that, but I'm truly a little baffled on how she's avoided so many votes for so long, because it is uncommon for that to happen.
Well, I think she did such a good job of like being low key about what her game was, but now she's talked to enough people that I think enough people on the island kind of see what she's doing. And she got votes this week, but I think I agree with you, Logan. I think Genevieve was the bigger threat than Kyle, and I think Kyle kind of even tried to say that in Tribal Council. He's like, a social threat's a bigger threat than quote unquote physical threat. Like, it was interesting how the votes played out, but I think Genevieve probably has one more week, because it seems like Sam and Genevieve are next, but I think Sam might be able to pull something out. I don't know if Genevieve can.
When this is jumping way ahead, but the teaser for next week, it was it Genevieve, Rachel, and Andy that seemed to, like, team up a little bit. I forget who the three were, but I think it was those three. And so it almost seemed like we're getting glimpses of things flipping on their head again. And it's shifted back and forth, but I think probably my favorite thing about Genevieve this week is just how articulate she is about her feelings in the game and how she's trying to separate the emotional and social side from the strategic side. And you could really see how, and she even spoke to it when she voted out Kashan, and he looked at her and said, Genevieve, I trusted you. And she's like, I can't let people get close to me because then I have those feelings that like I don't want to vote them out and I want to keep them around even if it's not best for my game. And obviously that's something that we see every single season, but for somebody to be able to articulate that and not necessarily put an even bigger target, and I mean she has a big target, but I don't know, it was just really really cool to hear kind of her thought process there and how, because she even said like I want to be that social player, like I'm a social butterfly, I want to have those relationships, but that is not good for my game and it's going to hold me back. And I don't know, it was really really cool to see that.
And I honestly wonder if how much. I don't think it'll change her outcome. I think she, like you said, she has a week or two left. But for her to say that, I think that even almost puts a little bit of a target on her back even more. Of okay, she is playing really strategically and not emotionally, and some of those things of oh my gosh, like I've built relationships with somebody else and closer with somebody else. How does that correlate with things? Because I think whenever you hear somebody say, "Hey, I'm playing strategically for myself, my game," out loud, I think that looks a little bit different than a normal player because they aren't able to articulate that in a way.
Yeah.
I could
And
see it. Sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think with her saying that, I think it hurts her should she make the final three. I think that hurts her as well because I know a lot of people in past juries really value like, name a time that you personally tried to connect with me. And she has already basically said that she wasn't trying to do that. So that could absolutely play against her.
Yeah, I could see it going both ways. You make a good point there though, because the jury does seem to look very highly on that. um, but if I hear that, that's somebody that I want to say, I, you know, I want to play with you as long as you're not going to throw me under the bus, kind of a deal. Like, because you clearly are playing incredibly strategically. Let me use that to my advantage, and I will be the social side. You be the strategic side. Let's get to the end, and then I'll be able to speak to that. So I don't know. It'll be really interesting to see if things do get shaken up next week, if she's able to overcome the target that's on her back. As far as like stock up or stock down this week, we've talked about most of them for me. Um, Andy, Caroline, and Rachel are kind of the big three. Um, is there anybody else that stuck out to you guys, or anybody's stock that like went down? Because I didn't necessarily have anybody's stock going down more than they already were this week. Um, so I was curious what you guys thought on that.
I think anybody not named Genevieve, Kyle, or Sam, I think their stock went up because Teeny, Rachel, Andy, Sue, Caroline are in what looks like, at least for now, a majority five. Um, Rachel obviously had the best game. Sue mended things with Caroline and got her her arch enemy out. Teeny's my winner pick, obviously not playing the game that I had hoped, but with the right group of people right now.
Do you think she could be that social player that everybody wants to see win if she makes it to the end? Like, because she's not making huge moves, but she clearly is like an incredibly social person. And was it this week or last week that she had that like moment where trying to find herself. Was that last week or this?
That was last week. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think she could win based off of her social game. Because I wouldn't say she's necessarily playing a bad game. She's not playing a good game either. She's just kind of playing middle of the road, which, maybe like you said earlier in the show, Blake, that's kind of the place to be right now, and maybe she has some tricks up her sleeve. Over the last, what do we have? 3 episodes left.
Mm-hmm.
So, but being everybody's best friend on the island might bode well for you if you get a chance to speak to the jury.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm curious where you guys are on Sam. He's in a really weird spot.
If you would have asked me last week, I would have been way lower on Sam than I am this week. It's not necessarily in a good spot by any means, but he's another one that seems to keep squeaking by. I don't know. I don't know how. I don't see a clear path forward for him to win the game with people still in the game like Genevieve, Caroline, Rachel, even Andy. I don't see how he could completely flip it on its head like some of the others could. So I don't know. I'm a little torn on Sam right now, honestly.
I think the hard part, I know you had something to say, Logan, on Sam, but I think the hard part for Sam is basically ever since Sierra got voted out, he's just kind of been a background character. Like all of his, story and big moves were all pre-merge, so he doesn't really have much to speak to in the post-merge outside of he's just survived.
He's one that I think is in a, like you said, a weird spot, and I don't see him winning the game because of the lack of moves and gameplay after Sierra got voted out. And I think obviously that was everybody's goal to split them up. But I think they chose the right person to keep because he hasn't done anything outside of that. I could be wrong here, but I think Sierra could have been a completely different social person, been more apt to go out and do things, where he has kind of just sat back and tried to have or be on the right side of the vote and just go along with things. And it's worked out in everybody else's favor.
I think you're spot on with that. I think Sierra was a better player, and I think he was just kind of letting other people, and still is letting other people do things. And I think you can actually look back to when everybody first merged onto the island and there was an advantage that they had to find, and the Genevieve and Sam both saw a buoy in the ocean, and Sam was like, whatever, and then Genevieve went out and got it. That kind of feels like that's what Sam's game is. Like, I see what I should do, but somebody else can take the lead on that.
Yeah, honestly, his biggest quote unquote move was when it was not this past episode, but the episode before where he kind of blew up Rachel's game a little bit to save himself, but that didn't really do him any favors with the rest of the tribe. So that's really the only thing he's done is kind of cause chaos. And
that vote went exactly the same way it was going to go.
Sure.
So,
but for him to kind of make his way back up the ladder, he's going to have to cause some chaos because he can't stay where he's at. And now, if he can survive the chaos, that's a different story. But that might be his only shot of kind of switching things up for himself.
And I think that was his whole plan. The entire time after Sierra got voted out, blowing up Rachel's game or causing the chaos. But I don't think what he did ever caused enough chaos or changed the outcome of the game of what was happening enough for him to slip in there and make a difference for his game.
Well,
Like,
now
I mean, with the Rachel vote of getting who was voted out that week, that he
Saul.
blew up everything, Saul. I mean,
Yeah.
if that would have gone a different way and Saul stayed, could things be different then? I mean,
could
the
have been huge for him.
Mhm.
But look at it this way: Saul's gone. He had Rachel. He had Rachel on his side at that point.
Yep.
And then he lost Rachel by doing that, and now here he sits, hoping to make it for another week. He's just fortunate that this week nobody was looking at him. It was between Kyle and Genevieve, but now I don't think it's going to be as black and white as it's just going to be Genevieve and Sam next week, because that's not how this season has been at all. I think that, based on the teaser and just how everybody's been playing, I think there's going to be some surprises next week. And maybe he's the one that creates that.
Yeah. Well, and there was a moment there where him and Rachel were sitting down talking, and she's like, "Man, how can I trust what you're saying right now? Because you literally blew up everything that I had told you last week." And like, and he explained it fine, but she clearly does not trust him. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how things shake up, because it does seem like things are going to get shaken up. It does not appear like things are going to stay in the hierarchy that they are, which I love.
I mean, it's been that way all season, which has been great.
Yeah. What did you think of how Kyle left the game? Because we've talked this season a lot about how we wish people just wouldn't talk after they were voted out. They would just get up and leave. But this one, and maybe it's just because of it was a good reaction and not a sour reaction, but it made me love Kyle even more. Like, he just seems like a genuinely nice, good person. And to hear some of his story from when he was growing up, and I mean, he talked a lot about, and I can lie, I can cheat, I can like do all of these things. That's just not who I want to be. That's not who I want my family to be. Like, him and Andy had a really good moment there talking about that, and Andy was like, "Man, people see, like, it's a game. Like, you don't need to worry about that." But I don't know. You seem to get a really good glimpse into Kyle as a person, and just for somebody to go through somebody like him has gone through in his life, and then turn out to be such a genuinely nice, good person. I love to see it.
I think I want to word this properly. I think some of the best people on the planet go through just terrible times at some point in their life. So they have they're just grateful for the little things and just see everything in like a completely different light. And I think that's Kyle. Like, he's already been through it, and everything moving forward past, what he's been through is, it's all good. So I think that's Kyle. And I have trouble like understanding how, when Rome's doing his exit interview with Rob Has a Podcast, how he's trying to stir up and say how Kyle said all these terrible things on the island and yada yada yada. And I'm having trouble understanding why Sue absolutely hates him when nobody else seems to give us that sense that he's not a good person. Everything that we've seen painted him in a great light, and the way that he left after he got voted out was probably the classiest I've ever seen somebody leave. Yeah. Just giving everybody a hug and telling them, how grateful he was and how awesome each of them are, and good luck, and I'll see you on the other side. And, I'm not one that likes to see people talk on the way out, but, if you're going to talk, that's the way to do it. You're not impacting the game in any sort of way by doing that. So, yeah, I think Kyle's just clearly a good dude, and he showed it there.
I couldn't say it better there, Brandon. I think leaving the game after being voted out and talking and and like blowing up a game because of what you say, never a great thing. But to leave the way he did and give hugs and tell people they're awesome, all of these different things just shows who he is, and I loved it.
No, I'm always a huge fan of what I would call cycle breakers. So, whether it's breaking free of addiction or abuse, or just because things happened to me in the past doesn't mean I'm going to continue that cycle. And he seems like one of those just cycle breakers, and I love those stories. It was really cool to see. I think it was Sierra on the jury, and she's like, and he's a better person than me because I'm still bitter. Like I forget how she worded that, but she's clearly still sour about things. And I don't know, it was kind of cool to see the difference there. So it was just a cool moment all the way around. Him and Saul should do a podcast together, and just I think they would be two awesome people to listen to.
Yeah,
that'd be fantastic.
Speaking of jury, how do you think they are viewing the contestants right now? I know that's an open-ended question, but because we've talked for, gosh, as long as I can remember us talking about Survivor, how the jury can view the game totally different than how we see it. They can be really bitter. They can be really supportive, and just. And I think we've got a good mix so far, but I'm curious where you guys think the jury is sitting and seeing the contestants right now.
Well, I think I won't include Kyle because obviously we haven't seen him sit on the jury yet, but Sierra, Saul, Gabe are the members of the jury right now. Sierra seems bitter. I don't know if she's just playing into that or if she actually is bitter. But I feel like for her, she's probably, looking negatively at the people that actually voted her out, and probably just deep down rooting for her original alliance with Sam and Rachel. Saul, honestly, probably vibing, is completely open-minded about who he's going to vote for. Probably hasn't even thought of it yet. Gabe, I think, respects the game a lot and will probably want to vote for Caroline or Genevieve or whoever actually orchestrated or initiated the vote to get him out. So I think you have three different type of people sitting in the jury, which I love because you have three different ways to look at it, where I don't think right now we're going to have this unanimous vote for the winner.
And I don't know if with the amount of, or the different type of people we have on the jury, even if they were all similar, I'd be curious to see how, let me rephrase that. I'd be curious to see if they all voted the same with the level of gameplay we're having from each individual person. And I think seeing how they come into Final Tribal and voting for the winner, I do think Sierra is holding a little bit of a grudge and a little bit bitter there. The other two, like Brandon said, Gabe is very much, I think, looking at gameplay of who voted out, who orchestrated votes and moves and different things like that. But it's fun to see the different type of people in the jury, and hopefully we don't have just a clear-cut winner unless that person deserves it 100%.
Yeah. No, I'm 100% with you. It's obviously going to depend on who the final three are, but I love the thought of it being a close vote. And I would love for all three people to get votes, and it be, I don't know how many people will be in jury, but if it's like 3,
8.
3, 4, there will be 8. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So I guess
unless they pull a fast one on us and do something weird with the finale.
That's true. Okay. So if it was, I don't know, even 2-2-4, I don't know. I would just love to see everybody at the final get some votes. Because I honestly, I hate when it's unanimous unless it's like deserved. But I also don't necessarily love when people go to the end and don't get a single vote. But I don't know. Could be with the different dynamics so far on the jury. It could be interesting to see how they all vote at the end. What about Survivor of the Week? I feel like we're all going to be on the same page. And I'll just throw a name out there. Are you guys have anybody else other than Rachel this week? I mean, is she the clear cut Survivor of the Week?
Yep.
For me, she is, yeah.
100%.
Yeah. I think we've said enough about her game this week. I don't know if there's like much else to add on top of it.
The only other thing that I was going to say, and we kind of mentioned this earlier, but the fact that she went on the journey, got an advantage, and that didn't seem to put a bigger target on her back. Like that's a big deal, because so often just going on the journey is one thing, and then as soon as people find out you have an advantage, immediate target, and not, I don't know.
She did a good job of, because she came back and lied. She said she lost her vote, right?
To three people, right? So
Right.
who is that? Sam, Genevieve, and
And Kyle.
Yep.
Yeah, and then she immediately turned around, and I think Sue was the first person she told.
Yeah.
And then obviously she told the rest of the group she was working in. I don't know if everybody heard the news. I'm assuming yes, but to be able to withhold that information from certain people as well.
Yeah.
And there's always that risk of coming back from a journey knowing that, okay, the entire tribe is waiting for you, and you have, did you or did you not get an advantage? So, and tell the truth, don't tell the truth. Half the people are going to believe you, half the people aren't. It's kind of one of those, doesn't really matter what you do, honestly.
Well, and I don't think Sam believed her.
Mm-hmm.
He was like, that was way too detailed. I'm on to her. She's got something. But it didn't seem to do anything.
Yeah. I mean, he's not really in a position to do anything either.
Yeah.
But I actually thought that was really smart what he said. He's like, she just said it, if I was in her position, she just said exactly what I would say. So I thought that was smart. But yeah, he's probably like, even if he's right, which he was right, like, who's he gonna tell and who's gonna buy it? Yeah, Rachel, really great game this week.
Yeah, she knocked it out of the park, like you said. And I think not having a target painted on her back after coming back from a excursion or whatever, a journey, especially this late in the game.
Call it excursions now.
Especially this late in the game is really impressive too. So
I think we mentioned this earlier, but Rachel and Caroline have not had a vote against them yet. So this far into the game, that's really, really impressive. And I am so excited to see the next couple episodes. Speaking of, how many more do we have?
I'm pretty
three more?
Sure, we have three more. Yep.
Because the finale is now a 2-part, 2-hour finale. So we have one more regular episode, and then the final 2 episodes, which will both be 2 hours. So
yep, sounds like it.
With as many like changes and stuff this year, not really changes, but slight twists on things. Do you think they will continue with the same like fire making at the end? Because that's been a staple for a very long time. Brandon, you might know, but when did they introduce that?
Fire making?
Yes.
Season 35. the
Man, you
season
were on it.
the season that Ben won. And it was Ben. I can't remember the other finals of that season, but yeah, season 35. And it was controversial when they added it because a lot of people felt like production like just randomly was like, oh, we really like this guy, let's throw in some random twist to give him an opportunity to win. But yeah, no, season 35. I just to go on a little history run here, I think one of the cooler fire making challenges, and I want to say it happened twice, but I think you guys can probably confirm that in a second. But in season 38, Edge of Extinction, which is like one of the worst seasons, but Chris,
Yeah.
who was on Edge of Extinction for much of the season, then came back and won immunity, was in Final 3, gave up his immunity to take on Rick Devens in fire making, and then beat Rick, and then turn around, got back into the Final 3, and then won. Probably the best use of fire making as far as like, as far as it being like a pivotal move in your game. And I think did it happen in season 40 too? With
40 or 42?
40 with Natalie. Didn't Natalie go to fire? Oh no, Tony went to fire, right? Against Sarah? Is that what happened?
I think so.
I believe so.
Yeah. Because I think it was Tony. Is it Natalie?
Yeah.
And I unfortunately can't remember who the third finalist was.
Michelle.
Michelle. Okay.
Yeah. I think you're right.
So been a couple cool uses of it. And I think it helps. Fire making helps like make the ending a little bit more interesting. Because, before then it was basically, wasn't it basically the winner just kind of chose who got out and that was that, and then you had your finals?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I like that there's like winning still gives you a little bit of control. You get obviously yourself, and then you get to pick somebody to sit with you, and then you have two worthy players that have to go head to head. And a lot of the times, like prior to fire making, the best player of the season would just get voted out fourth right before they had an opportunity to speak. So I like it.
Do you think they'll switch it up this year at all, or do you think that'll stay consistent?
I think they'll keep it, but I think we should watch for season 50 for them to do something crazy.
Yeah, I could see season 50 bringing people back, making some changes, just being a new set of rules and twists. I think could be really exciting.
Yeah, I could almost see season 50 being a bit of a throwback and bringing some aspects of like all the old seasons, from Edge of Extinction to, what was it, Exile Island, and I don't know. I could see them bring in lots of different variations and twists just to throw back, because that's a season 50. That's a huge milestone.
Yeah.
So, and we really saw the game shift at season 40 or beyond season 40, but yeah, I'm fully expecting things to get switched up a little bit at 50. So
yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting how the game has evolved through the years, because with season 40, obviously it was a big just celebration of everything that they've done. 20 years of Survivor.
because that was Winners at War, right? So
Yeah,
it's all
Winners of
winners.
War.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they did Edge of Extinction that season. They had an economy with the fire tokens, and they had, it felt like they were going to try to do all these new things, and obviously pandemic happened, so had to reset everything. But I think Survivor's in a really good spot right now with everything that they've done. It seems like, everything that you do, there's, potential consequences for it. It just seems like nothing is meaningless. Not that there was just nonsense happening in prior seasons, but it just feels like every decision that you make, both big and small, can make it or break your game right now. And I love that that's where Survivor's at, and they've managed to keep it fresh and keep us interested for 25 years.
Yeah. It's got to be one of the longest running like reality game shows out right now. It's got to be getting close, if not, right?
I would think. I don't know how old the challenge is. I think the challenge is up there too.
That's
but
true.
It's one or the other.
Yeah. And I think we've talked about this before, but I would be curious to go through and see numbers wise on how Survivor's doing. Like, just are they staying consistent? Are they growing? And maybe just because we're doing this podcast and that's all on my news feed lately, but it feels like more and more people are watching it. I feel like there was a little bit of a lull there, and then it's just kind of climbing back, and it's as strong as ever. So maybe not like seasons 1 through 10, but it's doing really well. So
yeah, and I think just kind of keep on that conversation. I think Survivor does a really good job for the most part. I know I kind of gripe about production, like with them, players losing their votes and all this. But I think for the most part, like, the players are in control of the game, and you feel that. You don't feel like they're being led in a certain direction, or production's like telling them to do certain things. So I think that's a lot of it, is that the players are, free to just do whatever they want. And obviously Survivor and production and CBS create a story out of what they do, but it never feels like production is just controlling them and they don't have free reign on what they're doing. And I think that's kind of probably why it's lasted as long as it has, because every season's different.
yeah. When we've talked about this before, the fact that there has not been any spoilers and we haven't found out who the winner is ahead of time ever, at least not that I can remember. I also try not to go looking for those. But I feel like you get that in other shows. I don't know why Bachelor and Bachelorette come to mind. It's like, okay, you kind of figure out who wins, but you just don't with Survivor. And I don't know how they've done that for so long and not had any spoilers. And I know they announce it differently than they used to, but you still have all the people that actually voted, and for none of that to come out is pretty awesome.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, The Bachelor, they're always like, this is an episode like you've never seen before. And it's like, yeah, we've seen this like 20 times, man.
Yep. Well, that's all that I have. Brandon, is there any mail in the mailbag?
There is mail.
Yes.
Ooh.
So I accidentally closed out. So do you have it open? Because if you don't, I'll work on that real quick.
Let me pull it up. I do.
Take it away.
It is actually from my father, Jim Hogmo. So he sent us two different emails. One will
Came back for
probably
more.
one of them we'll probably get into in a couple weeks, in between seasons, but we'll kind of touch base on that. But I think he wanted to talk a little bit about. I'll just kind of read his email. It said a couple points to talk about. I think we've mentioned this before, but Sue's face and how like just dirty she is. But she cleaned up very, very well before Tribal this week. And
It was a big moment for her. She was getting Kyle out.
she dressed to impress. So, but it is, and then he goes on to talk about like between just being clean to like facial hair, and you would think that some people would look a little scragglier than they are. Um, I think, is it Sam? Like his beard is longer. Um, I don't know. But then also talking about their clothes, and Brandon, you might know some of this because in the first several seasons, there was always big talks about like their personal item. Um, and when they first get on, like when tribes are split, they seem to have their clothes at least correlate color scheme a little bit. But then they all seem to have additional sweatshirts and things like that. Are they, do you have any insight into what all they're allowed to bring? Um, I mean, because they don't come with a whole suitcase, but it does seem like they have quite a few different sets of clothes. Um, so I'm just curious, are they washing them in the ocean? Like, what, do you have any insight to that, Brandon?
So I found an article from businessinsider.com that went into it a little bit, just kind of the evolution of clothing on Survivor. So in the old seasons, a little more lenient and allowed players to bring a little bit more. Blake mentioned that, everybody was allowed to bring a luxury item. We saw people bring guitars and notebooks, and Colby bringing his, the flag of Texas. That's not allowed anymore. Then there went through eras where players were only allowed to bring one set of clothing, and it was like very minuscule. Like it was like t-shirt, shorts, no jackets, anything like that. And then kind of in the seasons that we're in now, looks like they have a couple options that they're allowed to bring. Like they at least get a bathing suit, and then like looks like a couple changes of clothes. But from what I can tell, just in this article a little bit, it looks like the players, they don't have full control over what they get to bring. They get like, 3 outfits that they present to production, and then production approves or denies the outfits that they get to bring, but they want them to color coordinate with their original tribes. And then I think they get, t-shirt, shorts, and they get like long pants or like a jacket of some sort as well now. Because I know in like the middle seasons, the teens and the 20s, that was a big complaint. Like women in particular, like weren't allowed to have jackets. So now everybody is allowed that. And then a lot of times you actually saw Rachel, this past week, players that get voted out will leave clothes behind for the other contestants. So Rachel won this immunity challenge wearing Tiana's shirt. So that happens as well. So yeah, there's a lot of just interesting elements about clothing.
What about hygiene items like toothbrush, shampoo, soap, razor?
I didn't find anything about that, but as far as I know, they're not allowed to bring any of that. Like I remember in prior seasons seeing people brush their teeth with like sticks, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I know that like that used to be a reward challenge, and it might still be, where like you can go take a shower and shave your face, brush your teeth, get, do all the things. So yeah.
As I know, we kind of harped on Sue and her dirty face for a while, but it almost seemed like she got a spray tan before she came on Survivor, and then all the dirt was kind of sticking to it, and she finally washed it all off. But it was like night and day difference from
either that or
what we
she had
typically-
a giant fear of the ocean and just didn't want to go in. But
I saw a theory from somebody on Twitter that said, 'cause, clearly Sue's very into how she looks cosmetically, very into beauty. there's some theories that she's using dirt and mud to like contour her face.
Thing.
And yeah, I don't really know the details behind that, but it's plausible at least. But because I have a hard time thinking that Sue's just like walking around disgusting looking,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and nobody's like, "Hey, Sue, you got a little something here." So
Yeah. I almost wonder if that's a little bit of strategy too. Not and it could be on the like the beauty side, like you said, contouring the face. I almost wonder too if it's like, hey, I want to appear like I'm getting down and dirty on things, like like literally.
Mhm.
Um, and if that's kind of an approach she's taking, because she clearly has lied about her age. If she makes it to the end, I'm curious if that will come out at all, and maybe it'll be during like the little after party that they have. That Jeff will talk about that. But what'd she say? She was 45 or something.
yeah, and I
Sh-
believe she's actually 58 or 59.
Is she? I didn't realize she was that old.
Yeah, she's 58,
Dang.
which
Okay.
I think is an odd thing to do, to lie about your age. Not only lie about your age, but like we're talking 13 years.
Yeah.
Um, being the, older player on the season has usually, those players have typically done well. Like it's just looking at the last few seasons. Um, Maria,
Yeah.
Final Five. Julie, Final Five. Gabler won his season. And that's just 3 seasons off the top of my head. I'm sure they're Carolyn, excuse me, Carolyn. Um, Final 3 player.
Yeah.
So I don't know why you want to hide or run from your age when historically it seems to benefit you.
Yeah. I mean, she is the oldest one in a while, just like quickly looking through it. Because the next oldest this season, I believe, was Saul, and he was 42. So,
Hmm.
I mean, she's significantly older than.
If Sue's 45, then Saul's 25. Jeez.
Yeah. Well, and you mentioned Maria. I mean, she was 47. So, I mean, Sue is definitely the oldest contestant in a while. So that, I don't know. I wonder if that's going to factor into people voting for her at the end if she makes it that far. Because it is impressive. I mean, 58 years old and being able to compete with people half your age, literally, is definitely impressive.
Yeah.
And I definitely think she has a point of, I mean, trying to hide that a little bit, because I mean we've seen it in some of the earlier seasons where the older person is the first to be voted out because they're not able to keep up and different things like that. But she's clearly different from those people and able to keep up and compete with the younger people in the tribe and all. But we've seen it where those older people have gotten voted out first as well. So I mean you get a mix of both. Recently I think it's been in the sense of old, some of the older people have done well, but I could see where she comes from on that sense of just not wanting that to even be an option of, oh, she's old, she's not going to be able to carry her own weight, let's vote her out early. But
Yeah. Well, the other email that my dad sent was some future show ideas, and I mentioned that a couple times, but I think in between this season and next season, we'll do a couple filler episodes, take a couple weeks off, but do some filler episodes in between. And so one of those, I'd like to go back to this email and just some different twists or ideas or future styles of gameplay, or just ideas for Survivor in general. So um, I'll put that on the back burner for a couple weeks, but I am excited to go into some of those things in the next couple weeks.
nice. I like it. Well, thank you, Dad, for sending the email in. We're excited to get something and go over that. And anybody listening, if you think of anything, I'd definitely encourage to send us an email, because just helps us connect with those people that do send it in.
Yeah, and I love hearing what other people think. I love talking to the two of you as well, but it's also nice to hear what people listening to the show are thinking. So absolutely.
Absolutely.
Well, you guys have anything else? Brandon, you have anything?
I don't. Other than if you want to email the show and have your questions are on the show as well, send us an email at the mergefeastpodcast@gmail.com.
That'll be in the show notes or the description there. Logan, do you have anything else?
That's all I've got.
Perfect. Well, that's it for me. Tune in next week. Unless something goes awry, we will be back to our normally scheduled Friday morning, or the podcast being released on Friday morning. So make sure you tune in for that. And yeah, that's all I've got. I appreciate you guys coming in and joining us. And go ahead and say goodbye, Logan.
Goodbye, Logan.